Bear with me tonight if I'm a little bit off my game. Last night I thought it was a good idea to get both my flu vaccine and my shingles vaccine at the same time, and it is kicking my butt. So, with that as the starting point, if I stumble on words, forgive me. So, I issued 3 documents related to economic development. The first two, the work of economic development, the practice of economic development, I primarily issued for the benefit of the Economic Development Commission, and that was based on my meeting and discussion with them. But they are applicable to this process. The first one, the work of economic development, really kind of provides an overview of my perspective of what the work of economic development is, which at the end of the day, for me, is about creating investment and wealth. How do you attract and retain investment? And how do you attract and retain wealth in a community? The second document, I think, is the more interesting one about the practice of economic development. And I often use it in communities where economic development commissions are, I don't know what word I'm looking for, kind of floundering, looking for kind of better direction and something concrete to do. And to be honest with you, this is not unique to Enfield. The fact is, when you think about the statutory authority of an economic development commission, it's very different than the land use commissions. So a zoning commission is in charge of the zoning regs and in charge of hearing applications, gorgeous dog, and doing all those things that they regularly have to do related to zoning and the application submitted. Similar circumstance for wetlands. And then the planning commission, you have your subdivision regulations and the comprehensive plan that has to be done every 10 years, and also 8-24 referrals. So those commissions have very prescribed duties that have to regularly be performed, and they keep the commission focused. Economic development commissions, when you look at the statute, says they're advisory and says they should or can engage in these kind of activities, looking out for the economic development issues in the community. But they're not charged with doing anything specifically. And oftentimes, as has been in the case in some communities I've worked in, they also aren't well staffed, as say a planning department is or what have you, or it's someone's, additional duty to handle the EDC. So this document that I issued about the practice of economic development is really about providing any community, and I use this over and over again and tweak it to the individual community I'm dealing with, is really about providing the Economic Development Commission and the others in the community with kind of an understanding of the things that economic development typically engages in and what a community could be engaging in if they so chose. So in that document, I talked first about kind of governance structures. Sometimes there is a need to define the role and responsibilities and kind of go through that basic governance to figure out how to organize or structure the actions of the EDC. Then, business engagement activities, doing business visitations, networking events, attractions, business attraction, and then, community outreach and research. On this one, business visitations can often be very time consuming. And that's why I like kind of, especially if a community doesn't have full-time staff, the networking events can be an alternative way of reaching out. That mayor manager meet and greet, for example, I'm just going to provide an example. Actually, let me just share my screen so what I'm looking at is up in front of you guys too. That mayor manager meet and greet came out of something that we did in East Windsor when I was there. We really didn't have the capacity to go out and do business visitations. So we started a Breakfast with the First Select Woman program. And once a month, we would invite specific businesses, typically by sector, kind of similar businesses, in for a 7 o'clock in the morning coffee and donuts and bagels. And it was literally just a roundtable discussion around that sector. So, as you know, with the Southern Auto Auction there's a large automotive section, sector in the town. So I remember we had the automotive sector out, and we brought in the owners or managers, and basically had a roundtable discussion around kind of what were their challenges, what were their needs, what were their concerns. At the end of the day, to be honest with you, the thing they liked most was just having access for an hour, to be able to sit down with the first select person and kind of talk about their businesses. So there's things like that a community can consider doing.
Hey, Don, I know Pete's in his car. He's got his hand up, so that looks probably tricky. Do you have a question, Pete?
Thank you.
Well, I just had a comment. Reading through the document that Don and Lauren provided, you talk about I represent the Chamber of Commerce being active with the town to generate networking, ribbon cuttings, business after hours, and what you're just talking about, the legislative breakfasts. We would really love to get more involved with the town. I'd be happy to champion that on the chamber side of the town if we can get a champion from the town that we can work with and get some of these programs off the ground.
Great. That's awesome to hear, Pete. I think a chamber can play an active role in this. And I know, once again, just going back to my East Windsor days, and I know I'm 20 years beyond that now, but we did our best to kind of engage and reach out to the chamber, also knowing it's the same chamber, and piggyback our activities with theirs as much as possible. So then, as I continue, through these sections, community information, just maintaining data that's available for businesses, and typically available on the website. So it's just easy for small businesses that typically don't have good access to that market information to gain access to it. I'm not a fan, even though the real estate market information, I'm not an actual fan of available land inventories and building space inventories. They're really common, so I put them in here. I didn't want to exclude them. I just think creating inventories they go out of date so quickly that they can be so challenging to keep up to date, that I just think time can be spent better in other ways. That being said, I think having a good grasp, talking with your local real estate brokers, especially on the commercial side, and having a grasp on what rents are and what those values are, I think are important, and utility costs and so forth. Once again, valuable information to maybe small businesses.
Would you moderate that in terms of like a TIF district or something that's already been targeted?
Yeah, I'm if I didn't say it anywhere in here, it may have been in the work of economic development. I'm a huge fan of targeting. So whenever you have the opportunity to target, do it. I always find it funny. There's this weird reaction in government on targeting. If, just to say in the city of Hartford, if there's a crime issue, if there's a, gun violence going on in a specific neighborhood, the city has no problem targeting and pouring all the police resources in to do it. I find it funny, though, oftentimes in communities, when you start talking about targeting housing or targeting economic development and targeting into specific areas, the politicians often get kind of cold feet, and they're like, no, we've got to spread this around to everyone. But yeah, if you're willing to target and can target, do it whenever you possibly can. So
thanks.
Resources, just having good resources, links, and information about all the other agencies that provide programs, whether it be the state or utility companies or the chamber. even colleges and universities, real estate brokers, just anyone you can connect people to better, assist them is beneficial. Workforce development on the municipal level, I think, is often challenging. I think it's something that requires kind of full-time dedication to it, but it does, at the very least, open up opportunities where, having the Economic Development Commission engage with social services and discuss kind of, what do they see as needs on the job training front or challenges, engaging with the Board of Education, especially if there's good, vocational programs within the Board of Ed and so forth. So kind of networking and getting out to those other entities that can maybe more directly provide some workforce development stuff. The placemaking stuff I always struggle with, and I'll be honest. I view it as the soft side of economic development, but in the context of Enfield, to be honest with you guys, I've said this from the beginning, I think focusing on those amenities to the community, the things that make Enfield more livable and enjoyable and improve the image of Enfield, I think are extremely important. And I think that's possibly a place we could focus on a bit in the POCD. And you guys already do some good programming stuff. Your farmers market is an amazing program that's had an amazing success. Thinking about other community level, programming and so forth. And then the Economic Development Toolkit, kind of this way of thinking about the zoning regulations, the approval processes, the comprehensive plan, any special area plans, and then ultimately incentive programs. And I hate, it's funny. Me personally, I am fiscally conservative, and at my core, I really don't like tax incentives. That being said, in the work that I do, I've come to realize they really are needed. The fact is, especially in Connecticut, where market conditions are soft to weak and cost of living is high, meaning that construction costs are high, labor costs are high, material costs are high. The fact is, there's a lot of good developments out there that are really marginal from a financial feasibility standpoint. And tax incentives from a community, whether they be tax abatements or tax increment financing or other, similar types of programs, they can make the difference between a development moving forward and development not happening. And therefore they're needed. So I don't like being in the business of telling you guys to spend money. But at the end of the day, I think it can be beneficial in appropriate situations and circumstances. And your creation of the TIF districts is a good example of that. Utilizing the TIF in those areas should be able to kind of bridge the gap to get some development going in those areas. So then the last section, Economic Development Action Agenda, Preliminary Recommendations. And this is just, I'm not making broad kind of policy recommendations right now. This was just kind of like, if I had to give the Economic Development Commission some advice as to what could be, valuable to the community right now, these are the things that kind of raise to the top of my list. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think are low cost. So one, doing some economic development training at the board and commission level and possibly at town staff level. The Metro Hartford Alliance used to run a program called EDPO. It was Economic Development for Public Officials. And it took this perspective that economic development is customer service, that all the front counter people in the town should have some basic economic development training, because you never know who it is you are talking to at the counter. And it could be a business that's scoping out the town and so forth. So I think some type of training is probably in order. The zoning and use stuff, I wouldn't typically throw this into this document, but knowing that we're already going through the process of updating the zoning regs, we've already done this evaluation of uses and so forth, I thought it was worthwhile throwing in here. I think low budget, not very time consuming, business outreach and engagement programs can be launched. Like I said, the dinner, the breakfast idea where you bring businesses in rather and, get 8 to 10 businesses in at once rather than going out and doing individual visits with all 10 of them. But you can also target kind of like, who are your 5 largest employers? And can we, over the next 8 months, do, a business visitation with those 5 large employers to better understand them and hear kind of what their needs or concerns are? At the end of the day, the most important thing is just building the relationship, establishing two-way communication, and making the business feel like the town cares. And I'm not saying you're just making them feel like the town cares, but that, a lot of times most businesses have never been contacted by the town and just saying, we'd like to learn more about your business and hear what your concerns are. Typically, when the town contacts them, it's a code violation. So, the relationship is kind of more antagonistic in what typically occurs. So just kind of bridging that gap and opening up the communications. Yes.
Economic development has actually started doing exactly that. We invite a local business to come to our meeting and to tell us a little bit about them and see if there's ways that we can help them. And when we say ways to help them, we don't mean just listen to them tell us that they don't like something, but really have a genuine play. And the other thing that we're doing is to make sure that we're more out there at ribbon cuttings and events. So on what you're going down, we're trying to do that, at least in economic development.
Excellent. That's wonderful. And, hopefully you can just use this to frame what it is you're doing. And maybe there's some ideas here you haven't thought of,
I'm pretty sure there are plenty in there that we haven't thought of.
So, and at the end of the day, I just view it as, it'd be ridiculous for me to say you should be doing all these things. My general feeling is figure out what you can do and what you're capable of doing, and figure out what works. Maybe you try something and it just doesn't feel right. Move on, try something else. So it's really a laundry list to just kind of give you a framework.
Talking about regionalized activities, I just put in the chat a moment ago, the new Launch Hartford group is soliciting emails from area officials. There's always something to glean from what another municipality is paying for. So they've got some interesting programming coming up, afternoon type of webinars that they're doing, primarily to benefit Hartford, but what benefits Hartford trickles down to Enfield or trickles up. So it's in the chat. If anyone wants to click on it, take a look.
Great, thank you. So then the primary document I was issuing for tonight was just kind of my general assessment of the overall economic conditions in Enfield. And then big picture kind of where I see the focus probably needing to be from the POCD standpoint. So I'm not going to go through this line by line. I started off with the assessment just kind of saying, there's some really strong stuff about you guys. And you guys have said this to me. EDC said it to me. You guys said it to me last meeting. The fact is, you're in a good location. You have good access. You are the large town in north central Connecticut. You are kind of the central community up in that area with the largest amounts of retail, the largest amounts of office space, and so forth and so on. And you provide a small center to the northern portion of the region. You're also midway between the Hartford and Springfield region, which puts you in the middle of that knowledge corridor. So there's and access to, Bradley and so forth. So there's a lot of very good things. There's also challenging things, and some of it I wanted to make clear is beyond your immediate control, in the sense that for every community in Connecticut, we're all in this together. Statewide, job growth has been stagnant since 1990. And that's not a good thing. And population growth's been mostly anemic. Now seeing some kind of contractions going on across many communities, not just you guys. And these should be, at least from my perspective, raising some concerns from a policy perspective at the state level, the regional level, and at the local level. And ultimately, we see you've shed some jobs since your peak in 2007. You've lost 2,000 jobs. Now, that being said, I bet you we could tally up those vacant office complexes, and that's where most of that job loss has occurred. But also recognizing kind of the landscape's changed. The demand for large corporate campuses has dwindled. The way we work has changed, so what's the opportunity of, repopulating those large facilities like Mass Mutual? On the, retail side, the world of retail has changed. Malls are struggling. It's not just you guys in your mall, it's many malls. Buckland Hills is in dire condition right now, and I believe is in bankruptcy, is in a receivership, and it's shedding tenants left and right. So the landscape has changed. That being said, that doesn't mean all demand for retail has gone away. There's still new retail out there being built in specific sectors of the industry, and there's always demand for that kind of build to suit stuff and so forth. So recognizing those challenges, those changes, the differences, and then, my general findings is just, I am concerned. I dig hard into data, and I really don't like being a bearer of bad news. But when I look at all the data, I feel like the data is saying to me that the town, after 30 years of kind of stagnant job growth in Connecticut, and this isn't just you guys, it's other communities out there, that we finally reached the point where we just can't sustain this stagnation. And I think the most recent census data is actually kind of pointing to the fact that we may be on the leading edge of contraction and decline. And therefore, I just kind of feel like if everything stays the same, that, come the 2030 census, the picture ends up bleaker. I also want to be clear. I found a typo today, and in this sentence, in this paragraph on page 4, I said should be viewed as acceptable. I forgot the not, should not be viewed as the acceptable, that the status quo is not working and should not be viewed as acceptable. So if we skip ahead 10 years, nothing changes. I have to assume businesses and jobs will continue to contract. Commercial vacancies and possible residential vacancies will continue to increase. Property maintenance and both commercial and residential in appearance and value will likely decline, and the grand list will start showing declines. I know right now you guys are in a reval. You've got a strong housing market right now. So, I know on the, just a few weeks away from these words coming out of my mouth about decline, you're going to see a nice bump in your grand list over the residential property values. But that doesn't necessarily mean the trends are changing or shifting or beneficial.
Yeah, it doesn't help anyone either if it's an equal decline in commercial, right?
Right. And yeah, and I mean, that was a challenge. I'll just go back to East Windsor again. When I started there, we had, I think, 36% of the grand list coming out of commercial industrial. But I was also there in the early 2000s through the housing boom. And what we saw was stagnation in commercial and industrial property values, rising residential property values, new housing construction. And then we went through a reval, and the commercial industrial portion of the grand list dropped from like 36% to 26% overnight. And that kind of shift ultimately, we didn't lose any commercial development. We had added some, but it was the shift to the residential side of the grand list.
And
So I think you're probably going to see something similar, maybe not that large of a percent.
I'm
change.
looking at the people who are on this call, many of them have been,
Grieving that.
offering their skills for a long time now, and trying to convey, that grand shift from one thing to the other is the most complicated and losing argument in municipal politics that's out there. To that end, is there a place that you're aware of that would detail what communities around us have for a grand list mix that shows 70% residential, 10% industrial, 20% commercial, or something similar to that? Where can we benchmark where our neighbors are compared to us?
Yeah, the state, I believe OPM has an Excel database that you can download online, but every time, and I stopped looking at it because it's always about 5 years behind.
Yeah.
So, so it's just kind of like, it's kind of useless. What I typically do, and what I could do if you want me to as part of this, I could look at your surrounding community budgets, and most budgets, not all, but most budgets have a breakout of the grand list on kind of personal property, real property, commercial, industrial, and so forth. Sometimes it's not that clear, but it can be gleaned out of the budget or the audit documents. So I could do a quick look at your surrounding communities and kind of see where that is.
Is that the type of thing that you throw over to CROG, Lauren, and ask them to respond? Karen, thanks for the tip.
I don't think CROG would do that.
Okay. All right, then just
but
this may take some research.
I do know that Connecticut Conference of Municipalities will do some research if you ask them. I haven't had very good luck with their results.
Yeah.
But it's mostly been with zoning, but they might have a better, they might do better with a question like this. I don't know. Have you used them, Don?
Not in that specific way, no.
Yeah.
So,
it's all relative, right?
The CERC, which is now, what is it, Connecticut Alliance or whatever. The town profiles used to have the commercial industrial percent of grand list on them, and they just redid the town profiles and dropped that from it, which I was furious because that was a quick and easy source for me to go to all the time, and it's now not there. So I'll take a quick look. I mean, it's a half hour of work for me. I'll take a quick look and see what I can figure out. So, yes, Karen.
I would think, doesn't the assessor send in data annually as of a certain date to the state regarding what their taxable exempt properties, all that stuff? Don't they categorize all that in the values, and then couldn't we just gather that information from all the different towns? I mean, the data's probably there.
Theoretically, yes.
But nobody's putting it together.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just reaching out into town, for me at least. Reaching out in the towns where I'm not working, asking for specific data can be challenging. Right,
but I'm thinking there's a form they have to report the assessed values to the state. I know the 490, the exempt properties and those things they have to categorize and all that stuff. So I would think there's just one form, and if you could get that form from the state, why wouldn't it be public information?
No,
Um,
I'll take a look. It was my question.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll follow up on that. I mean, I think it's just curious, when you look at even over time is where it becomes interesting is
right.
we know that our retail is challenged, but part of that's because communities around us have finally built their own retail, stuff like that.
Yep.
All right, moving on.
So the last page here on the right-hand side of the screen, kind of my big perspective, and I've said this in a number of ways already, so I'm kind of being repetitive, but I feel I need to, I think you need to embrace change. I think you need to encourage growth, whether it's growth in population, children, young persons, families, businesses, jobs, and development. I think you need to embrace development, especially the reuse and redevelopment of existing properties. To be honest with you, I think that is the core one. These are in no order of significance, but for me, that's the big one. From a commercial perspective, looking at your corridors, you're mostly built out. And, then your industrial areas, you have a lot of constraints on the wetland side. For me, the challenge is how do you redevelop, get new investment into your existing development areas? And I think we've known from the beginning, the mall's the easy one or the obvious one, maybe not the easy one, but obvious. But I also look along that corridor and I think, or at least that section of the community, I think it's, reinvestment and redevelopment is, kind of key here. And then encourage and embrace multifamily development. And I should have said in there also mixed use. And I think that's down below. So then kind of getting into some specifics, remove barriers to reinvestment. I'm recognizing that we are working on the zoning regulations, but I had to say it, specifically reworking zoning regulations to embrace change, encourage development, and foster investor confidence. That's about creating predictable approvals, which I think I say in the last bullet. Encourage greater density and diversity in land uses, including mixed use and multifamily development in commercial and industrial areas. This is a more and more common theme. I was just involved in along the Berlin Turnpike, a mixed use commercial and multifamily residential development. I did another one on the Southstein Highway in Wethersfield a number of years ago. I'm doing a regional affordable housing study that includes kind of the Route 1 corridor down through Saybrook and Westbrook. And with some of the other consultants today, I was saying we've got to look at the Route 1 corridor as a place for residential, multifamily, and so forth. So this is kind of a common theme these days with contracting, retail space, overbuilt parking areas. These places are primed for, infill development. And when you drop multifamily right in with retail, you provide a captive audience of households, on that site with whatever the remaining retail will be. Provide incentives, that's playing off of the other document there. They can be density bonuses, master plan approach, if we're talking about zoning, to redevelopment applications, and then tax abatements and credit enhancement agreements. And I know you guys have the TIF, and credit enhancement of TIF funding is, possible and so forth. And I would encourage that to continue. So then streamline land use application and permitting process to create predictability. I like master plan overlay zone approaches. I just wrote one for Tolland. It was a recommendation in the POCD that I helped with. We then started work on all the commercial zoning districts in the community with a focus on economic development. And one of the biggest changes was the creation of a master plan overlay zone approach for one of their zoning districts, with the hope that it will spread to the other commercial districts. Lori, just for your reference, I think what I drafted for Ellington is a little less cumbersome, but essentially the highway interchange zone that was in East Windsor at the corner of the Route 5 and is it Newberry and the exit ramps from 91.
Yeah, Route 140 and Newbury Road.
Yeah.
We actually expanded on that after you left.
Okay. And that was written by Tom Fahey, not by me. It was part of a application. But at the end of the day, that approach where they come in with the master plan, it's not full-blown site plan. The master plan's tied to the zone change. That's your opportunity to say, we hate this. We're not going to approve the zone change. It's dead. But if you like it, it gives you a lot of flexibility to work with them, negotiate kind of the things you want, approve the zone change, approve the master plan, and then deal with all the minutia of drainage and so forth in the site plan stage. Most of my developer clients, that is their preferred route. They like it when communities have the master plan approach in place and they feel comfortable with it, because they don't have to spend 200 grand on 1 foot contour intervals and full-blown drainage design to get their denial. They know really soon at a much lower cost whether or not they're getting through, and there's so much subjectivity and to the zone change that they also know if they're denied, that they're not going to win a court battle, because courts typically don't overturn zone changes. So I think it's a real clean approach, and it's something we should consider in the context of the rewrite on the zoning regs for Enfield. So
Erin's got her hand up.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Colin. You're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. The last POCD, we did have the mall area having a mixed residential, commercial type of situation where that whole frontage area, I think there was maybe even a sketch of it or something, was going to be, residential 2-3 stories or even residential above the mall, some of the mall areas, whatever. But now that this guy's come in and split it all up into little sections, little plots, now we've got a Popeyes going into one spot and we got another thing going into another spot, and it's getting all broken up into little pieces. How does a town avoid that? And I don't know how we can do that, because even now they're going to tear down the AAA building and across the street and put up a car wash, which, we're going to start looking like Route 5 in West Springfield, which, I don't want to be looking like on Elm Street or Hazard Avenue. And I don't know what everybody else's vision is for that area, but, to me, that's going to suck if it starts looking like that.
Okay. I'm not sure I have a favorable answer. My gut, and this is just me being me, my gut when you said that to me was, too bad with the 2010 plan, you didn't adopt a master plan overlay zone that allowed higher density residential as part of mixed use for the mall site. And you probably would have got some meaningful activity and maybe something more along the lines of what was in that plan. That being said, I also, in some ways sympathetic to the developer, the owner of the site. If you've got a failing mall, but you've got excess land and there's a demand for pad sites, and as I said, those build to suit national chain stuff is still a very strong and viable part of the commercial, retail market, then I understand why the developer, the property owner, is going that way and parsing it up, because they're trying to salvage the property. They're trying to make it work as best as possible within the existing structure of the zoning. So the quicker we could get out ahead, I think, with something innovative and flexible to catch attention, I think the better chances you are to control the proliferation of maybe that stuff that's making you uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think the old Bob's Plaza there on Hazard Avenue, I mean, they talked about putting townhouses right along Hazard Avenue, and then they could put parking underneath because it's pretty low to the parking lot. And then Chick-fil-A goes in there, you know, so
Yeah.
you know, it's happening throughout the whole district there that
Yep.
we had said we were going to do a mixed use, and that would have solved some of the, you know, brought in some of the, maybe the younger people that, you know, we're looking for and that type of thing. But unfortunately, I think we might have missed the boat already.
So just a two-part comment, and I've got to go back and just kind of look at your regs in that area. I'm just feeling like I'm just missing the familiarity I need. But two of the things is oftentimes when communities create regulations to encourage certain things like mixed-use development, due to it being new to the community, they end up drafting a regulation that's more cumbersome and challenging. That was exactly how I ended up doing work in Tolland. They wrote this great mixed-use development regulation that looked great on paper, but just was not feasible for any developer to comply with the requirements of it. So I think making sure that the right regulations are in place is one key thing. The other thing I'm going to say is just kind of the flip side of the same coin. While I understand your concern over, you know, while I may understand your concern over a Chick-fil-A or a car wash, and you feel like you're losing out on something other and maybe it's too late. The other thing I could say, the flip side of that coin, is also to some degree be thankful for Chick-fil-A and the car wash, because the alternative could be or could have been no development opportunity, and sites becoming vacant and, you know, not invested in. So knowing that you have high traffic counts there, knowing that there's still some really strong retail anchors and that there's a lot of activity there, you have the ingredients for development to occur, and that's why development is occurring, even though it may not be exactly what it is you were hoping for. So,
but doesn't that go back to your initial? I believe it was in our initial meetings. Are we a Starbucks? What kind of coffee do you like, Starbucks or, you know, Cumberland Farms?
Yeah.
So that's where we're going.
Yeah.
So
And that's
Bill,
you have other raised hands, so you can
Yeah,
let those
sure.
Yeah,
people.
got Mary Ann and Penny.
first off, Karen, you're absolutely right, but on the second side of the coin, and I think, Don, you touched on it, our regulations are our regulations, and if a guy wants to come in and put another Dunkin' Donuts on Enfield Street, and the piece of property, however big it is, fits our regulations, really and truly, planning and zoning doesn't stop them. I mean, technically, there's no way or shape or form to stop them. And it's not our place to stop them. So
Yep.
I hear you. I mean, it would be great if we could have Wizard of Oz, but I don't know how you bring in companies and say, oh, by the way, we want it to be all these different things, or no, we don't want another Dunkin' Donuts go up on International Drive or whatever it's called. They got two Dunkin' Donuts on the same side of the street on Route 20. Scratch your head. I hear you, but I don't see one way, shape, or form that you can stop it. If our regulations approve it, it's it.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying that you should be stopping it. But what I'm saying is, you know, regulations can be a lever of change. And so long as you've got some market demand, regulations do nothing when you have no market demand. So long as you have market demand, which I think you guys do have, your regulations can shape and affect, you know, what it is you get. That doesn't mean that you always get exactly what it is you want, but there are ways to kind of elevate the standards and expectations within the regulations to get more of what you want than what you don't want. So,
Penny?
As far as the younger generation, I think Enfield did a disservice by creating the R88 zoning for residential, because basically the remainder of the land left in Enfield that is buildable is zoned R88, which creates a much larger infrastructure for the town that's going to have to maintain it. It also creates unaffordable building for developers and unaffordable houses for the younger generation who doesn't want 2 acres of grass to cut. So if we were to do something, we would do an R44 zone or even trade it less than that, depending on what they're willing to do with open space, or a fee in lieu of open space. So therefore, maybe we could finish the Scannick River walkway or something like that. But that is a huge roadblock that Enfield has right now, is there's no land to be developed, affordable for residential housing, single family homes.
Ken, just help me out. I can't remember what every zoning designation is. R88, is that a 2-acre zone?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. All right.
That time
That's
has
where most
passed,
of the
right?
agricultural is.
Okay.
Is that where you get into transfer of development rights and?
Well, I mean, we could come up with anything if we want to preserve open space, or I know the town has a lot of ideas, for the greenway along the Scannick River, or a bike path or anything. You could take the fee from the open space, the fee in lieu, and apply it for things like that while making affordable neighborhoods. I mean, look at all the star neighborhoods. I have a ½ acre of land here and it's still way too big for me. And I'd rather have a large park down the street than 2 acres of grass to mow. Even if the park had, a couple baseball fields, like they used to all have that, and we don't have it anymore. And I just think that in 20 years, and I might have said this before, you look out at, Bellawood, Laughlin Road, that infrastructure for all that road and drainage and everything else is going to be huge cost to the town of Enfield to replace, because some of these houses have 600 feet of frontage. And that's one house along all those sidewalks and curbs and drainage, all of it, and I just think that, we're costing the town a ton of money, where you could put 3 houses in that 600 feet and collect 3 times the taxes and, still do the same amount of houses with half the roadway and create open space. That was 50 acres. You could have 25 acres of open space. Or the fee in lieu would be huge, that could be used to create some sort of a recreational area. But I think that's, everybody who comes in front of planning and zoning, that's what they're talking about, is the younger generation. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. Well, where can a younger generation build a home right now that's affordable, that's not on 2 acres of land?
So just quickly, I just threw up a Google Maps image. This is in the Mystic section of Stonington, and this is the Mystic Aquarium, just to give you context, kind of next block over. I worked with a developer on a big mixed-use development here years ago, and bits and pieces of it have now been built. This is a 200 unit or 111 unit apartment building. There's now another one here. There's a third one that's going to be coming. But what I wanted to point to was this little loop road here. This is a separate developer that optioned this, that's building, they're townhouse units. They're single family attached. So you could either call them townhouses or duplexes. If you zoom down in, you'll see 2 floor plans on each of the structures. So that's what would be in here. This developer also just got another development approved in Cheshire. And I've got to be honest with you, these things are selling like hotcakes. They're hitting young couples, they're hitting empty nesters, and 56 units here in Stonington of these owner-occupied units, and 0 school-age children 2 years into occupancy now. I think it's a really interesting concept, is this kind of return to the attached single family house, or, you know, a modern take on the duplex.
Is that a
You gotta
common
go-
interest owners? I mean, is that who owns the
It's-
land? Who's doing it?
Yeah, these are done as common interest. To be honest with you, I'm not a fan of common interest because it does add cost on the common interest community fees. They could be done as zero lot line. I used to own a zero lot line townhouse, and that's where you have two lots, and the property line splits the firewall between the two units. And I owned the property like that for 13 years. So there's other ways to do it that don't have to be common interest. I just always see the fees on common interest just adding a cost.
That's why what I was talking about, it's not a common interest. It's a regular neighborhood. The roads are
Yeah.
owned by the town. They're smaller homes, 1,000,
Yeah.
1,200 square feet. And I think people would buy them up big time. They're affordable. That, say they're 3 to 330. They're not $500,000 to $600,000. And Enfield is a blue collar town. And, those are the houses that people are looking for. You look down at off of Bridge Lane there, that subdivision down by the railroad tracks. That subdivision's been going for almost 20 years,
Yeah.
and it's still not sold out. The Bellawood had the advantage that it was on the Ellington line, and they managed to sell out. But that's a tough sell in the town of Enfield. Take it from me. I sold a 5,000 square foot home out there and could barely break 500,000 with it. And if that house was 200 feet down the road, it would have been 800,000, because Enfield just doesn't attract that kind of value. And if we went with smaller quarter acre lots, and I'm not saying, build all 50 acres, quarter acre lots, but if we came up with something that makes everybody happy, it's beneficial to everybody in the town.
Yeah, you can do 1,400 square foot probably in the 335 range, which, is a decent size. So
1954 all over again, Ken.
Basically, Bill, that's where we're at.
That's what I live in.
I mean, and that was the brilliance of Levitt and Levittown. I mean, just think about that in the context. You couldn't do it today, but Levittown was built as unfinished capes. 1 bedroom, first floor finished, for mom and dad, and then the unfinished second floor of the cape to add the 2 bedrooms, the additional 2 bedrooms in the bathroom for the kids when they come along. And
that's how Star's houses were. A lot of Star capes were the same exact way.
Unfinished?
Unfinished.
Yeah.
There's people still finishing them.
Yeah. Karen,
I'm not sure we could CO that today. But
I kind of have the feeling that we've got plenty of lots out there that are quarter acre and a third of an acre, and they're all close together. All of those Star properties are that way. If somebody wants to put a nicer house on that Star property, hey, go for it. But what I'm trying to say is we have an opportunity, look at Blueback. I don't know how well it's doing now, but everybody flocks to that area. So you could, by possibly having the housing right there by those shopping areas, maybe people would like to live there. Maybe as an elderly person, I would like to live there, because then I don't have to take care of anything. I can walk to the shop to get my groceries. I don't have to even have a car if I don't want to. But to me, to take that 50 acres out there on, where you built those houses, I would have rather had that as open space. So, just leave it as clean open space.
I'm not disagreeing with you about doing mixed use around the mall area. I think it's up and coming huge, but you still have to offer some sort of a single family home, which Enfield has zero. Why would you buy a Star home for $250,000, tear it down to build another home, Karen? That makes no sense.
I'm not saying you have to tear it down.
There's got to be a happy medium. Do you want to put solar panels on all the land out there and lose the farmland? Because I don't think that's your vision either.
No, it isn't.
Actually, to be honest with you guys, I'm really pleased hearing you have this conversation. I think it's a really good conversation to have. And I hope at least you realized in my documents that, you know, any economic development strategy needs to include a housing component to it. Too often we see housing as something other than economic development, but it is wealth creation, it is investment, and it is where jobs go at night, and it needs to be considered in the greater context. So
Yeah, sometimes I like to be the devil's advocate just to get some conversation going on.
He
Just
does.
so you know, I'm not always 100% on what I'm saying, but sometimes I'd like to stir the pot a little and see what people decide,
I mean,
what comes out.
in terms of the recommendations, Don, that you had in some of your documents tonight, I mean, we
Yep.
in talking about balancing our opportunities where they exist, and to Ken's point and to Karen's point about optimizing land and all of the neighborhoods that we do have.
Yep.
And does something like prioritizing higher speed internet become a recommendation where if we know that people are working from home and we see challenges in the commercial and office space sector, if people are going to be stuck at home working for the next 15 years, is that does that become a general economic development recommendation? Something like
it can be. I mean, typically my feeling is, at least in most Connecticut communities, or at least in Greater Hartford, I don't see internet speeds being so slow that they're detrimental to someone from working at home. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's not common. So unless you have like just really antiquated, technology and providers providing crappy internet, I wouldn't focus too much attention there.
okay,
So
good to know. Thanks.
we do a good job of sorting that out individually, so long as it's there, But I guess the one thing that I could say is, cell coverage. If you have big dead zones, and you guys are pretty flat, so I wouldn't anticipate it. But it's funny, whenever I was looking to buy a house or rent where we are now, first thing I do when I walk in the property is look at how many bars I have. Because I live on my phone with my business. It is my office, and a weak signal is not acceptable. So I think cell coverage is something to consider keeping in mind, especially if you have dead zones. So.
Along the lines of what Bill said, if we keep working from home, we'll have a lot of attorneys taking office space for the divorces that are going to be coming.
We'll talk offline on how that works.
I mean, this is my general feeling, though. I think we have to anticipate, the world of work has forever changed, and everyone's not going to return to the office the same way they did previously. And that doesn't mean office space is going away, nor does that mean everyone's going to work at home. But what it does mean is meaningful changes at the margins. That if just 10% of the population remains at home or partially at home, that is a dramatic shift across sectors and so forth. So I just think we have to recognize these shifts are real, this change is real, and a lot of these things are going to persist. And it's going to create both challenges and opportunities. And at the end of the day, I think one thing I'm confident, active outdoor recreation space demand is going to continue to grow for it. So, people wanting to escape to the outdoors. So,
Aaron?
All right. So I've got to jump off.
Okay.
If you guys have any specific things that you feel I left out, recommendations you want to make, feel free to send me emails. I have completed, Lori, just so you know, and so everyone else knows, I have completed all but 2 of the town agency interviews for the community facilities. Lori, you're one that I haven't done, and the other one was just a scheduling conflict. I've got to get it rescheduled. But I'm in a good position to start moving forward with community facilities as kind of foreshadowing next month for us, is to start looking at that topic. And I'll probably kick back maybe I'll take some of the recommendations in the practice of economic development document. I'll combine them with the assessment document and give you guys kind of a short, piece on economic development for consideration. So,
And that is Wednesday, the 17th of November. Is that correct?
and that is correct in my schedule.
Very good.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night, all. I'm gonna